In 1992, the British pound was on the verge of collapse. The Bank of England took emergency measures and was forced to withdraw sterling from the European exchange rate mechanism. This event is known as Black Wednesday, and the British government lost around £3.14 billion in a single day. Due to this event, the ruling party lost the next election and remained out of power for 13 years. The man who took advantage of Black Wednesday was George Soros, who shorted the sterling and earned over $1 billion in just a single day. That's not all. George Soros was also found in 1997 Asian financial crisis. In 1997, due to high manipulation of currency, many countries' currency and GDP dropped at least double digits. The GDP of Indonesia was dropped by 43.2%. Thailand's GDP was down 21.2%. Malaysia's GDP was down by 19%. South Korea GDP dropped by 18.5%. Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad accused Soros of the Malaysian currency's ringgit's crash. JP Morgan, who was the founder of the world's largest bank Chase, once said, "Millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do." Either George Soros heavily manipulated England and Asian markets, or he predicted the future prices. But it's clear he earned billions by being involved in such crisis. At the age of 17, he went to study at London School of Economics. For day-to-day expenses, he worked as a railway porter and waiter. Today, George Soros has a net worth of $8.6 billion, but that is after making charitable donations exceeding $32 billion to civil society groups. Forbes labeled him the most generous giver as he distributes around 64% of his earnings. He started Open Society Foundations, which is the second largest foundation, only second to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It is believed that he funded the Black Lives Matter and Antifa movements. Everything happening in the world is funded by him. In reality, we have no proof of his involvement. His success as an investor may have been equaled by his controversial reputation in some circles as an influential supporter of liberal social causes. Want to know how George Soros was able to become one of the most successful people in finance? Watch the full video. George Soros, the railway porter who earned $1 billion in just one day. We at Business Chronicles tell the stories of extraordinarily successful people. Please subscribe to our channel to help us in making more videos. In 1930, George Soros was born in Budapest, Hungary, to a well-known Jewish lawyer. When the Nazis invaded Hungary during 1944, the effect on Soros's family was profound. They were forced to go their separate ways using false documents to evade capture, which would have resulted in transportation to the concentration camps and almost certain death. By 1947, they had made it to the safety of England, where Soros attended the London School of Economics, studying philosophy under Karl Popper. But instead of becoming a philosopher, he became a merchant banker instead, joining Singer and Friedlander. He moved to New York in 1956, analyzing European securities to start with, but it wasn't long before he started to make an impression. Soros set up his first hedge fund called Double Eagle, later retitled Quantum Fund in 1969, and he used the profits to set up his second Soros Fund Management in 1970. The Quantum Fund hedge fund gave birth to a whole host of other associated companies and grew from its initial $12 million in assets under management to $25 billion by 2011. His style of investment has been characterized as daring, but not all of his speculations have been successful. His insightful and analytical nature may have led him to correctly predict the global stock market crash of 1987. But he wrongly guessed that Japanese stocks would be the worst affected. Soros attained an almost mythical level of adulation during the 1992 Black Wednesday currency crisis in the United Kingdom. By short-selling $10 billion worth of pound sterling, effectively betting against the Bank of England, Soros profited to the tune of $1 billion. As he had borrowed a stake, the sheer nerve required to trade on the basis of what was effectively a giant coin flip seemed incredible. His apparent genius for knowing when to short as well as swap stocks can be traced back to his philosophy education. It helped him to formulate the general theory of reflexivity for capital markets, which he has said gives him a clear idea of both the fundamental and market values of securities, along with a clear view of asset bubbles. As previously mentioned, his approach was not always perfect. In 1994, he expected the dollar to rise against the yen, whereas in reality it fell for the whole year. Because of this downward trend, the Quantum Fund is said to have lost hundreds of millions of dollars during just one trading day in February, proving that no speculation system can ever guarantee complete success. In 1997, Thailand's currency, the baht, came under assault from speculative attackers. But despite accusations of complicity, Soros denied any involvement in the ensuing financial crisis that gripped Asia in 1998. Although Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad held Soros responsible for the ringgit slide, the investor was suffering too. His funds endured losses in the billions because of the same crisis. He did manage to claw back his losses thanks to successful early investments in nascent internet companies in 1999. But it is interesting to note that he adopted a more cautious approach to investing after the tech bubble burst in 2000. In December 2002, a court in France found him guilty of insider trading. This was to do with a stock deal in 1988 involving Société Générale, a financial services firm. They issued a €2.2 million fine, and in 2006, despite an appeal by Soros, the ruling was upheld by the Cour de Cassation, the highest court in France. In July 2011, due to changes in the federal regulations that govern hedge funds, Soros declared that the Quantum Endowment Fund would stop handling external investors' money and would only look after Soros and his family's investments. Soros's interest in philanthropy was evident as far back as 1984, when he established the Open Society Foundations, a philanthropic organization that included a network of foundations. To start with, its main focus was on Eastern Europe and Hungary in particular. He handed out scholarships, offered technical help, and assisted with the modernization of schools and businesses. This is remarkable given that Hungary was still under communism, but it worked. The government allowed Soros's foundation to fulfill his philanthropic goals without interfering. The end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet regime saw Soros setting up more foundations in Czechoslovakia, Poland, Russia, and Yugoslavia. Critics noted that while he accused Western governments of short-termism, he was doing the same himself, by profiting from short-term currency speculation. But whether he was being hypocritical or not, he was still spending large amounts of money in the hope of establishing democracies in Eastern Europe and beyond. Throughout the early 2000s, Open Society Foundations was at work in 70 countries, and in 2017, it emerged that Soros had handed over $18 billion to the organization in just the last few years alone, confirming it as one of the biggest charitable groups on Earth. Soros has often been placed at the center of baseless conspiracy theories, apparently due to his financial support for left-leaning political causes. In 2003, his donations helped to establish the Center for American Progress, a liberal think tank. He was against the re-election of Republican President George W. Bush in 2004 and funded opposition groups like MoveOn.org, giving them millions of dollars. In 2008 and 2012, he also gave to Democratic Senator Barack Obama's presidential campaigns and did the same for Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden's runs for office in 2016 and 2020 respectively. In 2010, Human Rights Watch, an NGO, was the grateful recipient of $100 million of Soros's money. He has penned a number of books including The Alchemy of Finance 1987, The Crisis of Global Capitalism, Open Society Endangered 1998, and The New Paradigm for Financial Markets, The Credit Crisis of 2008 and What It Means 2008. A documentary was made about him in 2019 entitled simply Soros. George Soros had a very tough life at the start. He lived his childhood in fear of persecution by the Nazis. To get education, he went to study at a prestigious London School of Economics, but still he had to work odd jobs like railway porter or waiter. From the start, he got into the habit of working hard. His hard work and guts to make risky investments like borrowing money and shorting British pounds was a very bold move. He took the bold move and became the man who broke the Bank of England. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to watch more videos like this.